play it any louder, then it's getting shut down.
My name is Waffles, and I'm a government whistleblower turned political commentator, and this is the last 24 hours in the news. Today is September 20th, 2025. It is 11:46 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Here are the top U.S. news highlights for the past 24 hours. Judge dismissed, struck down, Trump's $15 billion defamation suit versus the New York Times, September 19th, 2025. A federal judge threw out the lawsuit yesterday, describing problems with filing and giving the plaintiff's lawyers a short window to refile. This is a major court-level rebuke of a high-profile legal action the president brought against the press. Mass probationary firing ruling, September 15th, still consequential, but older than 24 hours. Multiple outlets reported a federal judge concluded the administration's mass termination of probationary federal employees was unlawful. The decision was published earlier this week, September 15th, and remains an active legal story. The most notable domestic mobilization remains the Memphis Safe Task Force National Guard deployment announced by the administration in a White House memo, and coverage on September 15th, that deployment and the pledge to consider similar action in other cities Chicago named earlier remain active issues. They were reported earlier this week, but not in the last 24 hours. Things seem a little bit calm right now. I don't know if I'm missing something here. U.S. conducted another lethal strike on a vessel in the Caribbean. President Trump announced a recent strike on a vessel the U.S. alleges was trafficking drugs. Multiple outlets report several people were killed, and the White House says this is part of a larger maritime operation. The president earlier was bragging about pushing people out of the fishing industry. So I think that's his goal here. The action has drawn diplomatic protest from Venezuela and legal policy questions from U.S. lawmakers and analysts. Ongoing items to watch reported earlier this week include the judge's decision on the mass probationary firings, continued administration emphasis on federal law enforcement deployments, no new nationwide infrastructure failures in the past 24 hours, no new public health emergencies announced. Yesterday's court action striking down the $15 billion NYT suit is the most consequential recent legal development involving the president's legal strategy. Supreme Court to weigh on key parts of Trump's economic agenda to destroy the world and take all the money for himself. That's just my opinion. The U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments on November 5th in a case regarding use of tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA. If he keeps doing this, guys, my suggestion is if you have a business that is doing international trade, if you're getting packages from outside of the country, or you're sending packages the opposite direction or whatever, or if the tariffs are impacting your business, consider filing a complaint with the World Trade Organization. And if you're outside of the United States and this is impacting your business, please consider filing a complaint with the World Trade Organization. I think that would be a really good idea, that we start seeing that there's some international oversight, since this motherfucker's just absolutely out of control. The Trump administration has used the tariffs under IEPA to impose sweeping import penalties. Before the court is Trump's attempt to remove Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, which legal challengers argue would threaten the independence of the Fed. This case is being fast-tracked. Fed Governor Stephen Moran defends a push for steeper rate cuts. Please no. Okay, so who is this guy? He's obviously an idiot. This is Stephen Moran, and it is my personal opinion that this person is an idiot. Textbook summary of an American idiot. In commentary on September 19, 2025, newly seated Fed Governor Stephen Moran argued that interest rates should have been cut by 50 basis points at recent meeting and advocated for further steep cuts in upcoming meetings. He also emphasized that the decision to dissent was independent and not directed by President Trump, responding to scrutiny given his recent transition from an economic advisor role. Oil demand concerns drag oil prices despite Fed's recent rate cut. Oil prices fell slightly after the Federal Reserve's recent rate cut as market participants pointed to weakening fuel demand in the U.S. and a drop in home construction as signs the economy may be slowing. Inventories of distillates rose unexpectedly and production increases among OPEC Plus also weighed on sentiment. Global economy shows resilience amid policy shocks despite tariffs, trade tensions, and other economic policy uncertainties. Under the Trump administration, global economic growth, stock markets, and capital flows have not yet collapsed. Oh God, I feel so optimistic that I'm reporting that the markets have yet to collapse. That is so encouraging. Markets continue to adjust, though risks are rising. And remember, kids, the stock market is not the economy. Just because the S&P 500 or Dow Jones might be performing does not mean that jobs are growing, wages are secure, inflation is under control, or that people are thriving. Here's the latest hazardous weather outlook for the next few days for the U.S. based on what the Storm Prediction Center and NOAA have issued in the past 24 hours. Plains and south-central U.S. late today evening into night portions of the Texas Panhandle through western and northern Oklahoma are under a marginal risk of severe thunderstorms. Storms could produce isolated damaging wind gusts and large hail. Into tomorrow, Sunday, the risk shifts slightly. Parts of North Texas and the middle Missouri Valley may see isolated severe storms, mainly large hail and occasional gusting winds. SPC identifies modest instability in these areas, but not high confidence for severe widespread weather. Ohio Valley, Great Lakes for the evening into tonight. Scattered strong storms are possible over portions of western Michigan, northern Indiana, and Illinois. Some storms may produce strong gusts. The threat diminishes overnight as conditions stabilize. Drought and dry regions. The U.S. Drought Monitor reports below normal precipitation is favored along the Rockies and eastward across much of the Great Plains, upper Midwest, and into the western Great Lakes region. This suggests continuing or worsening dryness in those areas. And for top international news highlights for the past 24 hours, Trump returns to UN General Assembly amid global tensions. U.S. President is set to attend the 80th UN General Assembly in New York in a session dominated by the wars in Gaza and Ukraine. Growing international calls for a Palestinian state and renewed concern over Iran's nuclear program. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that global cooperation is under strain. China reiterates position on TikTok following Trump-Xi call. After a phone call between Trump and President Xi, China issued a statement maintaining its existing stance. It supports commercial negotiations over TikTok, wants a solution in line with its laws, and calls for fair market conditions. Key issues, ownership, structure, control, ECT remain to be clarified. Argentina's President Milei to meet Trump and Netanyahu. Argentine President Javier Milei will meet U.S. President Trump and Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in New York. Netanyahu's coming to New York again, you guys. On the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, Milei has also confirmed plans to open Argentina's embassy in Jerusalem next year. Maduro offers talks with Trump envoy after tensions. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, after recent U.S. military strikes on vessels allegedly carrying traffickers, had offered to engage in direct talks with U.S. envoy Richard Grenell. Maduro denied that Venezuela plays a major role in drug trafficking and expressed concern about U.S. military buildup in the Southern Caribbean. This concludes the news for today. Other than that, I've kind of been sitting back a little bit. I just did a lot of paperwork, for my lawsuit, and just did a filing yesterday, so I'm a little bit burnt out mentally, and it's hard for me to even want to look at this crap. Not saying that anybody wants to look at it ever. This is just horrible that we're all having to collectively experience this monstrosity of a president. I saw footage that it looked like Netanyahu was expressing support for that guy that got shot that I don't care about. Charlie Kirk, that's his name. Yeah, that Netanyahu guy was out here expressing support for Charlie Kirk. I found footage of that. Person reporting in here, it looks like there was a church that was broadcasting an AI generated message from Charlie Kirk during some sort of vigil. This is bizarre. The person who's reporting on this is calling this mass psychosis. Disney lost almost $4 million, I think. Disney lost 3.8 billion US dollars overnight because of people leaving their services as a result of the firing of Jimmy Kimmel. So I've got a friend here reporting that Ben & Jerry have both resigned from Ben & Jerry's. I thought it was just the Jerry guy, but it looks like it might be both of them. 11 city officials were arrested after trying to inspect ICE facilities. Kash Patel made an absolute ass out of himself and made it very clear to the American people that he may not know how to do his job, but he knows his ABCs. He can at least get through the first 5 of the alphabet. The administration has also made announcements that they're planning on deeming Antifa as a terrorist organization. There's a lot of clapback coming from the general public in regards to that matter, as a lot of people are saying that the people who fought in World War II were Antifa. Yeah, I don't know where this footage came from, but here's Netanyahu speaking in support of Charlie Kirk. Wrong button.
It's insane. It is false. It is outrageous. Charlie Kirk was a giant, a once-in-a-century talent who defended freedom, defended America, defended our common Judeo-Christians.
Yeah, so that's kind of creepy. So the 11 lawmakers that were arrested, that was in NYC Fed Plaza. And Donald Trump just recently made an absolute ass out of himself in England. And what else? Governor Gavin Newsom has passed an energy bill to reduce energy costs in the state of California, and has also just recently passed legislation to call for that the ICE agents not be wearing masks anymore. So this concludes today's news. Stay safe out there. We'll see you later.